If you want to be as fast and smart as a 2002 Turbo, what do you need to do?
You need to buy one. No, you need to subscribe to our YouTube channel right now. I'm getting tired of reminding you people. We've got great stuff, podcasts, driving videos, events, tours. We're going to so many different places this year. Come along for the ride.
Don't miss it. Subscribe now. Welcome back to the Audrain Automobile Museum and our exhibition, Technological Marvels, A Story of Evolution. We have now evolved from the late 1940s through the early 1950s, the mid 1960s, and now we find ourselves, Ben, in the 1970s. Now, the 1970s, of course, are a time that you remember well.
Yes.
You were unborn for how many decades in the 1970s?
Well, I've heard through many stories that the 70s were a great time. My dad graduated college, my mom graduated college, things were happening.
The 1970s were absolutely amazing. And I remember each one of these cars that we're going to talk about in this segment vividly when they were brand new. And they inspired me as a young enthusiast in a way that, you know, I wanted to one day aspire to own one of these cars. And I came close with one of these cars, and you're going to have to figure out which one it is. But for now, let's talk about what we've got here. We've got a 1973 Pantera, a 1976 Cosworth Vega, and then we'll see a 1974 BMW 2002 Turbo. Now I know that you're a BMW guy, so that's why we're holding that for last, because we want you to slowly work your way into your comfort zone.
Sure.
So we're going to start as far outside your comfort zone as we possibly can with the Cosworth Vega.
Okay.
Just kidding. No, the Cosworth Vega is one of those things, we spoke in our last video about the Corvair and the Detroit's efforts to fight the imports. This is fighting the imports, take 3. And the Pinto and the Vega were very, very different approaches to that whole idea of an import fighter. The Pinto was very much a leaf out of the Mustang playbook, in which Ford designed it from scratch, but with a lot of parts from the Ford global parts bin to make it as easy to get to market as quickly as possible. GM, on the other hand, again, sort of discovering or wanting to take advantage of technological advances, thought, let's build a car the way, for instance, our subsidiary in Germany, Opel, might build it. So let's do a fairly narrow, small chassis with an all-aluminum, brand new all-aluminum inline 4-cylinder engine, and make it very lightweight. And they succeeded in building a lightweight, very European-looking car from the 1970s. It could be, you could put Opel badges on this, and people think, okay, that's fine. And the engine, which proved to be the Achilles heel of the poor Vega. However, this is a car, and again, we talk in some of the display art in the gallery with great advertising. And probably one of the best examples of truth in advertising ever to come out of Detroit is the Cosworth Vega. 1 Vega for the price of 2.
Yeah. They weren't hiding anything, for sure.
Not at all. Their thought was, well, a 16-valve double overhead cam engine developed and built by Cosworth Engineering has to be worth twice the price of a standard car.
Right, right. The idea was good. The thought was good. And it's almost the opposite of what happened with the Pantera, with an American body and a European engine, as opposed to vice versa. But the idea was good, but it was too complicated for what it was worth, in my opinion. I mean, this is a very common formula today. Twin cam, overhead valve. Yep, 4-cylinder. I mean, Honda's mastered this, right? Lightweight sports cars with rear-wheel drive or front-wheel drive, but it just, to me, I don't think the market here in this time understood how significant this had the potential to be.
And for me, and of course, everyone watching this network, hopefully you've already seen the driving video of this car. If you haven't, you can watch it here. Because I love this car. I think it's absolutely remarkable to drive. This example is a ridiculous example which the Audrain collections acquired with 97 miles from new. So it is as close as you can get to a brand new Cosworth Vega. Now, I also don't recommend generally buying undriven cars because they can be rather problematic. And indeed, when we first attempted to take this one out for a drive a year ago, things did not go particularly well. But our great team of in-house mechanics really resorted it and got it onto the road. And so you can actually experience what the engineers at Cosworth and Chevrolet had in mind. A car that's really responsive, very active in its dynamic capabilities. But to your point, the technological marvel came at a price which, frankly, the market wasn't prepared to bear.
No.
You could buy a Corvette for the price of this car.
You could, or even maybe a Porsche at the time. But objectively, it was a great car. It was, like you said, it's a very, energetic car. It's very planted. You can really use it. The roads you were driving on down in Virginia, where it seemed to handle it fine at pretty good speed. Right car,
never exceeding the speed limit, of course.
No, I don't think there is a speed limit on those roads in Virginia, actually. I didn't see a sign. But to me, right car, wrong time.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And it's one of those things that it's a car that has a reputation, and a very poor reputation. And I think that it's something that in the future, as time goes on, I think that it will reclaim a bit of what it was meant to be and what it could have been. And people will admire it for the glorious failure that it was, rather than saying, it's just a piece of junk and you never want to look at that. Now, the next car we're going to talk about is this lovely Pantera here. And this, again, is one of the cars that came from the Nick Begovich collection. And he bought this car new in LA, and it's got something just about 10,000 miles from new. And this, too, is a remarkable car. I was madly in love with the Pantera. And as you mentioned, it was what we used to call a hybrid.
Yeah. With
the American engine and Italian design and bodywork. Although, interestingly enough, Italian bodywork designed by an American, Tom Charda, who was one of the lead stylists at Ghia. And this car, I thought, was absolutely amazing for a number of reasons. One, because it took all of those things that Alejandro DeTomaso was a brilliant guy, slightly crazy, but a great businessman. He never ever lost money in any of his ventures, always by using other people's money. But he managed to talk the Ford Motor Company into backing this venture to take the design that he had made. It's basically a development of his first car, the Vallelunga, and then the wonderful Mangusta, and to make it a car that could be marketed in the US. Ford needed a Corvette fighter. And so they thought, hey, if we can bring this car in for about $8,000, custom Italian built body, our Ford 351 engine in it, and we'll sell it in Lincoln Mercury dealers. What could go wrong?
Well, and that was really the most shocking part about this whole experience for the average Joe, was that you could walk into a Lincoln Mercury dealer and see a yellow mid-engine sports car on the floor. And frankly, I think to a lot of people that made no sense whatsoever. But right, with that 351 engine behind your head, it was really a solid car. I mean, it wasn't a Le Mans fighter by any means. I mean, it has its flaws that I think are, frankly, more dangerous than some other cars in this room. I'm talking about downforce and whatnot, but altogether, it was a stunning marketing ploy, and it's something that we probably won't see again from Ford. I think at this point, they probably have the funds to just handle it themselves.
Exactly.
i.e. Ford GT over there.
Yeah, we have come through an age when, and frankly, I miss this age, when big manufacturers said, this is what we do well. We build hundreds of thousands or millions of a model, and we want to be in this niche market. So let's go to a specialist who builds 5,000, 4,000 cars a year and go to them and have them build something special for us. We're missing a lot of that sort of specialness in the market today that once existed, certainly as late as the 1970s. And the Pantera was also quite a wonderful thing, because as it came in at $10,000, that was very expensive for the time, but compared to a Ferrari or a Maserati, you were saving thousands when thousands really made a difference.
Yeah.
And you could take it to your local Lincoln Mercury dealer to get serviced.
Right.
You didn't have to wait for exotic parts to be shipped over the ocean from Italy or France or England. And unfortunately, again, you said that it was sort of a mind-blowing experience for the average Joe to walk to a Lincoln Mercury dealer. It was even more mind-blowing for the average Lincoln salesman to say, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? Don't you want a town car instead, sir?
Yeah, right. The reality is they weren't horrible cars. They were actually very well performing. They were pretty reliable for what you were getting. And the value was great. And you could drive them anywhere. Again, I wouldn't suggest driving it on a track, so to speak, but the whole package in terms of, you know, when this car came out and what was available at the time, huge value and really an immense powertrain for what it is.
And when you realize that it had only been perhaps how many years, a few years, that Ferrari was building road-going mid-engine cars. So the mid-engine configuration was also very new, very fresh, very exciting, and a great technological advance for cars that an everyday driver might want to drive.
Yeah.
Now, the next and last car in this group we're going to see, again, a car that's very near and dear to your heart, and also something that, once again, takes this whole idea, which is so common today, turbocharging, and introduced it in a really new and very dramatic way.
Yeah.
Let's take a look. And now here you are in your special place with
This
a
is
BMW.
This is the best vehicle in the show.
Oh, those are very, very strong words. We haven't gotten to some of the other vehicles in the show yet.
That's my opinion.
Mr. Chester.
My opinion.
But this is an amazing car. And what makes it most amazing to me is the fact that it was the first production BMW turbo. And also, much like we discussed, the difference in performance between a standard 356C and the Carrera 2, a BMW 2002, wonderful, capable, sporty sedan, 2002 Tii, a really capable and fun sporty sedan, the 2002 Turbo, another planet.
Before the 2002, BMW was in a tough spot, and they were really looking for new light, I guess I'll say, and drawing new consumers like myself. But people who were looking for an enthusiast vehicle, a lightweight, front engine, rear wheel drive, sporty car. And this was just as BMW's getting into motorsport and the M colors are being seen on the race cars, but there's still a disconnect, I think, to your average buyer of, oh, those are race cars that's completely different from what BMW's putting on the road. So this was a huge step in connecting the dots for people and helping them understand, like, we build real deal machines.
It was also quite interesting for BMW, and you can see it on this car. One of the sort of identifying features and most notorious features of the 2002 Turbo is the decal on the front spoiler.
So good.
In reverse, 2002 Turbo. Now, to understand that, you have to understand driving in Europe, specifically on the German Autobahn, where people have excellent lane discipline. They watch their mirrors, and when a fast car comes, you move over and let it by. This was designed so that it could be read in the mirrors of cars. 2002 Turbo is coming, so I better get out of the way. And needless to say, the Germans, especially the government of Germany, is a very serious organization, and they said, this is very interesting, mein Herren, however, you will not put that on the cars because it is encouraging antisocial driving. So they weren't allowed to put those on the cars, and all the ones you see now were either put on afterwards again or sold as a decal kit in the trunk. They weren't allowed to put that on at the dealership, which I think is absolutely hysterical.
It is. BMW got a lot of slack for this with it being announced basically a month before a global gasoline crisis. So it was another case of great car, not a great time, but you know, we're talking about with the Porsche, you know, 130 horsepower. Wow, it feels much faster than the original cars. This turbo with almost 200 horsepower is not just, wow, it's fast for the period. This car will kill you today, and it has serious power and serious turbo lag, as they all come from this period, but we're not talking about a little turbo like in your 1.3 Jetta. The turbocharger is like this big. It's immense.
And that's one of the things that's so great. Again, talking about the movement of technology, the fact that, as we agreed, turbos are ubiquitous. Every family car has a turbo.
Well, every BMW is turbocharged now.
Absolutely.
Every single one.
But turbo lag was something that we used to, back in the day, love. Because first of all, it kept you on your toes. You had to really play the throttle in a way to use the turbo so that you knew when the power was going to come on.
Right.
You did not, for instance, apply full throttle in the middle of a turn. Very bad idea.
Right.
And so I think that it taught those of us who drove cars like this in period a much deeper respect for the performance.
Right.
Today, performance is really easy to access.
It's much easier today, and you hear the crazy stories about the 917 Porsches in which, you downshift into a corner, one more downshift, lay on the brakes, and then you turn into the corner and you're left foot braking while flooring the throttle before you hit the apex, so that after you apex, you let go of the brake and the boost has built, so you're already on your way. It's like
planning.
It's yeah, I guess it's proper planning prevents poor performance, I guess is the term. But this is one of those cars in which once the boost does load, you're moving at a serious rate, but this car has a great steering rack, really good brakes, and the whole layout of the chassis with the engine as far back as possible, it handles so well. You just have to be ready for when the power comes on, because it's not instant at all.
You mentioned fuel crisis, and I think that's something that, frankly, also affected all three of the cars we're talking about today.
Yeah.
They were introduced just at a moment when we thought that we could just continue the development that had been started in the mid to late 60s and just sort of find those refinements in power. It wasn't all about just putting a honking big engine in. It was about finding ways to use technology to make smaller engines, smaller cars, lighter cars that were more powerful, more responsive, to give you the same performance that a big block Chevy or a big block Ford did in the mid 60s. And my personal story here, because you didn't guess which one of these three cars I came close to buying, speed dump was the 2002 Turbo. I had my first Scirocco and thought this was a really neat car, and I had to replace it. And so a friend and neighbor of mine was a BMW dealer, and he loaned me a 2002 TII for the weekend. And needless to say, by Monday, I was madly in love with the car and thought, oh, I have to get this car. Then I realized that they also had the turbos, and he actually had one available that had been sold to a customer of his who kept it for about 9 months and said, this is not for me. And thought, well, Donald, you're a big car enthusiast, you love these things, what about that? Prices. This car was $6,000 in 1974. The TII was $4,500. The Scirocco was $3,700. I bought another Scirocco instead.
Good move.
Big money difference. And it's really interesting to think about, we were talking about the Cosworth Vega. One Vega for the price of two. The Cosworth Vega was $59.95, so almost the same price as this BMW 2002 Turbo.
Well, the Turbo was a rare bird, but the TIIs and 2002s in general, once you worked your way up from a 1600, 1800, 2002 TII, these were rich kid college cars.
Absolutely.
Like for $4,500, $5,000, we're talking about a lot of money back at the time when you could buy.
So I was a college kid with Scirocco.
Right. Yeah. When you could buy an American car used for what, $1,500, $2,000, and that's talking about a good amount of money saved up if you're a college kid. But this is a true hot rod. 2 years before the 930 came out from Porsche, which really took the world by storm. But this really has those same kind of guts as that 930, which is really remarkable. Looking at it, thinking, oh, look, it's a cute little BMW with colors on it, This is a knock your socks off hot rod all day long.
And what's great about all three of these cars is the fact that they demonstrate graphically the fact that the 1970s are a decade that a lot of people don't think about in terms of performance or technological advances. However, a lot happened in the 1970s, and we're glad to bring it to you in this exhibition, Technological Marvels, A Story of Evolution. Thanks, Ben, and come here and join us in the gallery to see this exhibition and watch our great videos to come here in the Audrain Museum Network. Thanks for watching.